Welcome everyone to another CONTRABIM tutorial on Archicad. My name is John, and today we are going to be taking a look at composite walls versus complex profile walls of essentially the same setup here. So we're going to be looking at a few little examples, and then we will jump into an exercise showing you how you can capture the settings of a composite structure and turn that into a complex profile here. So the whole idea behind this workflow is really to create a little bit more flexibility within the walls themselves. Now composite structures by themselves are obviously super useful. They can get cut automatically when we have building materials that are being routed through them, but they are limited in terms of being able to adjust the thickness of different skins and the offsets of different skins vertically up and down, independent of the rest of the composites here. So that's where actually converting a composite structure to a complex profile and adding in modifiers, like you can see in this particular one here, for the ability to offset up and down independent of the overall height of the wall. So that's the whole concept here. It can certainly be useful in a number of different cases to be able to do that, such as offsetting the bottoms of walls at slabs or foundations, being able to offset the top as well at different roof eave conditions. So I find, there's a lot of different cases where I'm working with a composite structure and it's getting me 90% of the way there, but I wish that I had a little bit more functionality for moving things up and down. And so that's where using a complex profile can really come in handy. So all right, that's a little introduction into what we are going to be talking about today. Let's jump over here to just our floor plan where we have both composites and complex profiles set up. One thing I'll note is, when we select these, obviously this is going to show us that we are working with a composite. If you want to go in and make any edits in there, then you would do that really from the composite structures dialog, and this is going to be really a global update that's going to adjust every wall type that's drawn with that composite. So that's one benefit and one downside at the same time. When we are working with the complex profiles, instead of adjusting the thicknesses here from the base complex profile here. So let's just open this one up real quick. Certainly we have the option for, taking these skins and offsetting them and adjusting them here. But we also have the option to do that with what we call offset modifiers, which we can access here and be able to go in and control different thicknesses. So like the exterior finish thickness, say we wanted to go like 1.5 inches, we could bump that up right here in this list of modifiers, and then you can see that change occur there. So this change is obviously not global. This change is one that occurs on an element by element basis. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind when working with these. Now, one thing I want to point out before we really start diving into the exercise of creating a new complex profile is just a quick mention about performance with these, between the two. Now, when I grab a composite structure, hopefully you can notice here as I move my mouse around, everything is very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very responsive. So there is no real delay time when I'm going to edit these walls. Now, if I grab the complex profile, which has, let's see, I don't know, maybe 10 different modifiers there, and I grab this, there is a noticeable change in responsiveness. It's not terrible. Like I can make these edits pretty quick, but I can tell that things are slightly slower. So that is one thing to take into account, is just, knowing how many different modifiers we want to add, because that does have an impact on performance, certainly of working with the walls, but sometimes also when you have different windows and doors you're placing in those complex profiles, you don't want to have excessive complex profile modifiers, because that can detract from the performance. So let's go down to one that's maybe a little bit more complicated. Again, the composite structure here is very light, easy to use. When I grab the same version of it that's a complex profile, it definitely is noticeably slower here. But with one, wall type like brick, where that it may be very valuable to me to be able to push up and down some of those skins and change the thicknesses on the fly, in some cases it may just be worth it. So all right, next up, let's go down here. Let's do a few things. I'm going to kind of turn on my line thickness. Let's switch this over to our model pens. I should have shown you that before. And so what we have queued up here is actually a wall type. This is an EIFS type wall, not something that we see very often down here in Southern California. But I thought it would be a good example for how, walking through the steps of taking this, converting it to a complex profile, and then adding those modifiers. So what's interesting about this wall is it actually has the wood framed element, that 5.5-inch wood plus insulation. It's got an airspace in here, and then we have a furred out interior wall, and then our interior finish. So the first step here of capturing this with our complex profile manager here is simply to select it. You can see when we deselect, the capture gets grayed out. Obviously we want to select it, and then we want to capture that profile. Now, I will note that it is important to just double check the height on the wall before you capture it, because that is the height that's going to be built in as the nominal height here. Okay, so we've gone ahead, we've captured it. I always like just going in and let's save this. We're going to save this as part of our grouping of exterior walls here. You can see we don't have too many of them here, but that's one of the beauties of working with the complex profiles, is they're so flexible. You don't need a million different wall types to really capture what you need on a project. Versus composites, you might have to have 3 or 4 different very similar composites to really get the job done on a project. So okay, we are going to be naming this B2011, and we'll just call it an EIFS wall. So let's just go ahead and save. So this is B2011, B2011 EIFS wall. Okay, and wood stud. I do like noting what type of framing it is, just between wood, metal, or CMU. Okay, so we now have set that. The first thing that I want to start with here is we actually want to change our nominal width. So whenever I'm setting up a complex profile for a wall, I always like making my nominal width the thickness of that primary stud member. So that way on the fly, when I'm working with this profile on a project, you can change it from, a 2x4 to a 2x6 to a 2x8 really easy, and you don't have to go searching around for that thickness. All it is just the nominal width thickness, and so that makes it nice and clean to be able to work with. So okay, we've now have that thickness in there. You can see our there are stretch modifiers turned on from the top to the bottom. We'll just leave those on for now. But let's just start by going through the process here of adding in some thickness modifiers. So from this wall here, really I'm thinking about kind of the group. Well, first of all, sorry, let's just start with the thickness modifiers, and then we'll talk secondly about the vertical offsets up and down. So the first one here that I want to add a modifier to is going to be the finish exterior, in this case, which is the exterior insulated finish system, the EIFS system. So let's go ahead, and under our profile manager here, we have a new modifier. And from the list, you can see that I already have several of these in here. A lot of exterior types, interior types, a few ledges, and I'm sure this is going to grow over time. But the first thing that we'll add here is going to be the exterior finish thickness, and let's go ahead and hit OK. And so now we've added it into this profile, and we now need to go and select our working points for changing the thickness. So we can actually start from this point here. I always like to go from the inside outwards. So we're going to start by picking our base point. Now, sometimes when you're doing these thicknesses, a lot of the times I'll actually like to stick it to the skin on the back side. I find is a good practice, but it doesn't, you can stick it to the thickness skin itself. In this case, like, you know, as I hover over this, you can see, and I'm hitting tab right now to switch through these. You can see that there's the EIFS and there's the air barrier behind it. In this case, I'm going to stick this to the air barrier, and we're going to set our thickness based on there. So let's go ahead and we'll hit save. We're going to add just a few more of these as well. So let's go ahead and do the exterior, where is it? Exterior wrap thickness. And again, we're going to go from the inside one. So we're going from the sheathing to that face, and we're just going to add that. Now, there's an important note that I want to point out here with this is, and I'm thinking it'd probably be good to show an example of screwing this up first. Well, for now, let's just kind of we'll work through this. I want to show you what happens when we go ahead and we'll just stick this third one here. So let's do exterior sheathing thickness, and we're going to go from our wood framed member to our thickness there. And so now we've added these three, and you know, at first glance it seems like all is good, but let's go ahead and just hit save on this, and we're going to go back to our floor plan view, and then we're going to play around with this a little bit and see how it's working or not working in this case. So I'm just going to take this composite wall. This is the one that we started with before we captured it, and I'm now just going to apply it by clicking that option there. And so let's go in and start playing around a little bit here with the thicknesses of those offset modifiers we just created. So let's go to our offset modifiers, our exterior finish. So let's just change this now to 2 inches. Okay, so that seems fine because it's on the outside skin there. You can tell that it moved inward because our base point was there, and then we stuck it to the outside surface, which is our stretch surface. Let's do another change here. So maybe in this case we don't have any sheathing, so let's just zero that out. Okay, so we can see that it did start pulling this in, but you can see that it didn't zero it out all the way. And in fact, it also made our air barrier thicker there. So we had some strange things that just happened when we made that change. So I'm going to actually undo that for a minute. We'll undo both those changes just by doing Control Z. And what's happening here is if we go back in and we're going to just edit this profile, what's happening is we're changing the thickness of that one member itself, but we're not adjusting what's on the outside of it. So in order to add the outside skin, because if you think about it here, we really have 2 skins. We have one for our sheathing, then we have another for our air barrier here. So what we actually need to do is we need to add another surface here, or another face to this modifier, so that it not only changes the thickness of the sheathing, but it also moves this edge right here as well. Now, as I hover over this, you can see that it's red, which means if I click this right now, it would actually delete that line, because that is one that you can see is associated with the wood sheathing there in our little preview on the component indicator. Now, if I hit tab on here, you can see that we've now switched over to the air barrier, and you can see that the line is blue, and I'm going to click right now to select that line. At this point, you may be wondering, like, what's the next click? Where are we, what are we doing? Well, if you look down here, it says define the positive direction for the edge offset. Now, if I actually zoom out here and to the point where I can see the arrow on the middle, that arrow point is always going to be halfway in between the top and the bottom there. So of course, in this case, we want the arrow to be on this side. And so by clicking it there, we can see that now we've added it, and it really finished that command there that we had started. So now we have 2 different faces added to this one offset modifier. Okay, so let's do the same exact thing here with our exterior wrap. We're going to click on the plus here, and we're going to hit tab to stick that to our EIFS. Now, if I click over on this side, I know automatically that the arrow that I just added is going to be on the right, or in this case on the left side, which is our correct side to be on. So, okay, so we've now added kind of 2 more surfaces here, skin edges, to our modifiers. We're going to hit save on this again, and let's go back And now let's see what happens when we adjust our modifier here. So let's make this say 3/4. Okay, so now we are moving everything with it. If we zero that out, you can see that it's now gone and everything is in the correct placement. So, okay, so we've now created a few successful modifiers. Let's add, well, first of all here, let's do a quick review of just our performance. So I can tell obviously the composite is nice and fast. Our complex profile, it is still pretty fast, but I can tell that it is just slightly noticeably slower than this one, but it's still very light and easy to work with. So, okay, let's continue on. We're going to go back in and we're going to continue editing this particular complex profile. So let's do our 3 skins on the inside. So let's actually go and add our interior air gap would be this space here. So we're going to add that, and we're going to start this from our framing member going outwards. Okay, while I'm doing this, I know that I need to stick it to that wood framing member, or actually it looks like I stuck it to the wood framing already, and I need to add the air skin face as well. I kind of did that in the reverse direction, but as long as you have both of them picked up, then it's fine. It doesn't really matter what order. Let's add our interior furring thickness for that furred wall. So again, we're going to start this from the airspace and send it outwards. And while we're doing that, we are also going to add in our other surface over here. And again, I kind of did that backwards, but it's fine as long as we pick up both of them. And so finally, we will add our interior finish thickness. And in this case, again, we're going to go from the inside skin outwards, and we don't have anything on the outside there, so we can stop at this point. So let's go ahead and hit save. Let's go back to our floor plan view here. Again, I can see that things are very, pretty much the same performance as we had before, but now we've added 3 additional offset modifiers. So say, for example, we don't want to have the air gap, and we just want to put like, I don't know, like a 1x sheathing member there. We can quickly create that change, and now we've gotten rid of one of the components entirely, and we've adjusted the other so that it's different structure for us. So we can undo that. We can undo that last one. We have a lot of different things that we can do with this now. I do want to point out our nominal width down here. If we wanted to boost that up, say to like a 2x8 in this case, then we can just change that. And so that wall thickness, this one down here, you can see that's our input, which is now the nominal. We can also see right below that the total here of 1'5". So okay, so yeah, we were moving right along with this. Let's continue with this just a little further. Well, actually, one thing I'll point out here. Let's jump back to our 3D view. We can see that we've now added this new one. You can modify the thicknesses here in 3D and in section as well. You just grab that line, you look for the offset edges, and then you can go and just simply plug it in wherever you want it to be. So I have found that it isn't always quick to get that little dialog to pop up to be able to plug it into. So I think in section it might be a little bit easier, but if you do want to make the change, then obviously you can do that right here from our offset modifier. We can just bump that up to 3 inches and all is good. So okay, time to create some offset modifiers that go up and down. So once again, we're going to go back into our settings here. Let's just start by, well, let's start by creating a modifier down at the bottom here. We don't have any others that are kind of planted here, so it's a little bit cleaner to look at. And so let's go ahead and we are going to add an exterior finish bottom offset. So Now we have several different options here for where we want to place this. And just kind of speaking, of the overall picture here, whenever I'm looking at adding modifiers for going up and down, usually I'll look at the exterior finish and do that independently of the, what I call typically like the backup, because there are times where you may want to just have one of these go up and down versus the other. Certainly we can add all of these to the same modifier so that all three of these skins would move up and down simultaneously. We also have the opportunity of sticking the exterior skin to the what we'd call the backup modifier as well, so that when you move the backup, it would automatically drag that skin as well. It's all personal preference here. There may be times where you want to have them totally independent and stuck to the framing member, or you may want to have your finish stuck to the backup. Really up to you. So, okay, let's go ahead and we'll add one. So we're going to do the exterior finish here. And so in this case, let's actually just stick this to, we'll stick this to the main framing member. So I'm using this point here from our stud framing, and we're just going to come over here and we're going to set that as our exterior finish bottom offset. Now let's go ahead and add one more. We're going to call this the exterior backup bottom offset. And so once again, we're going to go from that same working point from our framing plus insulation. We're going to add our sheathing first, and then we are going to click on our air barrier and we're going to add that as well. Now, right now, we currently have all of our arrows in this case pointing down. That is one thing that I do like to have is pretty much in general, all arrows pointing up, so that when you want this to move in the positive direction, you would add like, say like 3 inches and it will move in this direction. If you want it to move in the negative direction or down, then it would be -3. So as long as you know what direction that you are going, it's fine. But it's obviously good to keep these arrows moving in the same direction. Otherwise, when you change one, the other is going to automatically go in the other direction, which would be pretty annoying. So, okay, we're going to kind of change this last one here. So I'm gonna highlight this and okay, there we go. So now we have that pointing up. And all right, let's go ahead and hit save. So we've now added 2 offset modifiers for the exterior backup and the exterior finish. Let's take a look at that here in 3D. I can grab this one and I can push it up and down. So you can tell that right now we're going in the negative direction and the positive direction. So yeah, we can just go ahead and, oh yeah, I guess when I hit D right there, it did jump me down to this point here. So let's just go 8 inches. And so that actually recognized the direction I was going as positive in that case. But yeah, that's fine. So, okay, so there we go. We've now added those modifiers. I can tell that it's still pretty responsive for making those movements. Let's check it out in 2D just to see how either good or bad the responsiveness is. So, okay, yeah, it may slightly be slower. I have found that adding a lot of these vertical modifiers can slow things down a little bit more. And of course, the more skins you have in there and the more details and the more edges you're pushing around when you're making changes, the slower it will become. So again, that's always something to kind of balance as you are adding these modifiers. But let's go in, we'll add another one in this case at the top. Let's kind of do it the opposite of what we did at the bottom. So we are going to, in this case, we're going to start by adding our exterior backup top offset. So we're going to start it from our working point here. We'll add our first one, then we will add our second again, and we want these arrows pointing up once again. And then we're going to add our finish. So exterior finish top offset. You can tell by this list that it's slowly getting shorter as we're adding more of them to our profile. So with this one now, instead of sticking it to the stud, we're going to stick it to our outside air barrier here. And so that way we have now kind of binded these two together, at least for the first movement of those. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at that here to see how those are bound together. And so let's grab our exterior backup, and we're going to pull this up, and let's just send this up, I don't know, we'll go up a foot just for the sake of example, and you can see that that automatically pulled our finish with it. So that is kind of nice, but we do have this as independent as well, so we can always make a modification from this point, because all it's doing is it's just recognizing our backup point as our starting point, and so then we can make the adjustments there. So let's go down, in this case, -4 inches. And the other thing that I want to point out here is now when we start changing the overalls on our height is, you know, this is our nominal height. Say if we drop this down to this point over here where we have it on our other wall, it will move those with it, which is great. But it is one of those things that if you are going to adjust the nominal height of the wall, probably do that first and then make the adjustments to the skins if you're trying to match, you know, other components or other model elements elsewhere in the model. And we'll see here, this might kind of work backwards for me. See right now, like I think that finish is probably going to get pushed up as well because it's based off that last one. So obviously there's kind of like an order of operations here when you go to set these. So just something to be aware of. Okay, I think that is probably it here for these offset modifiers. Hopefully this has been kind of a nice little lesson on how to create those and add those. There's really a lot of different ways that you can use these beyond like just an exterior wall. Like having these set for stem walls can be really nice as well, for creating different like ledges and different points of interest here. So like I can create a different ledge condition here. Say if I wanted to bring that all the way down and have a different kind of intersection there, you can change, I don't know, there's so many potential options here for these types of walls. Having like a waterproofing or damp proofing layer on the outside, being able to offset this up and down to try to match the particular grades. It's just one of those things that is nice and kind of helps detail things in 3D before you start getting to more of the sectional or detail creation itself. So you can see here, like that's you know, very nice example of being able to have a brick wall sit on an exterior footing ledge in this case and be independent of the framing members. So probably same thing up here at the top. Okay, I'll wrap this one up here. Thanks for checking it out. Let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, we will be back here again with more Archicad tutorials coming up very soon. Thanks for watching.